Hello, welcome to The Beat with Emmy. I'm Emily Meekins, and I'm so glad that you can join me today. Today, we're going to talk about the pandemic of 2020. We're going to take a look back 100 years to 2020 and look at the coronavirus disease or COVID 19, um, see what happened, what was done correctly, and what was done that could have been done better. So let's dive right in. What is coronavirus? Coronavirus was a flu like disease that attacked the respiratory system. It was not discriminatory on who it attacked, as it attacked uh, adults, children, elderly, people of all races, people of all economic background. The middle aged and the elderly seem to uh, be affected more than young people. Children, although they did contract the virus, they were not as affected by the virus. There, the virus was so widespread that there was uh, worldwide chaos. The world economy basically shut down. Air travel stopped. Cruise ships industry was affected. There were travel bans to and from certain countries. Um, at the time when the pandemic first hit in between January and March of 2020, there were actually cruise ships out on the seas. And people got stuck because they were not able to disembark in the ports where they were. And so the cruise ships couldn't sail and people couldn't get back to their destination homes. Um, they did not know exactly what the source of the COVID 19 outbreak was, but they suspected that it was started in the wet markets in Wuhan, China. The likely source of transmission was bats because the COVID 19, the coronavirus disease, was known to be found in animals and bats. And so they believe that maybe a bat infected meat at the wet market, and that's how people got infected. Now, there was no evidence that bats played any role in the spread of the coronavirus. So let's look at the symptoms. What were the symptoms? So, some of the key symptoms were dry cough, shortness of breath, fever. People had flu like symptoms. It would start with a dry cough and fever, and then it would blossom into more than that. Severe symptoms of the virus were bronchial, bronchitis, uh, and pneumonia. People would progress, disease would progress, and people would get so sick that they had to be put in the hospital, and there were countless people placed on ventilators. Um, it was really a scary time because most of the people that, well, a large percentage of the people that were placed on ventilators died. Um, the virus spread through uh, droplets in the air and from touch. And so in the United States, the CDC recommended that people wear masks, that they practice social distancing by staying at least 6 feet apart, and that they practice washing their hands as often as possible. Um, the virus uh, was so widespread that the world economy shut down. Um, People were uh, in high demand for nurses, for doctors. At first, in certain areas in the United States, doctors and nurses from different states would volunteer to go to New York, which was one of the states that was initially that was badly hit by the virus. New York, California, Washington State, um, these states were badly hit. New York suffered the most because they had the highest numbers of deaths, followed by California. Um, so, the statistics in the United States, approximately 30 million people was infected with the coronavirus, and approximately 520 people died from the coronavirus. Now, of those numbers, black and brown people were disproportionately affected by the virus, as they were 2 times, 3 times more likely to be infected with the virus. Black, brown, and indigenous peoples were 3 times more likely to be infected with the virus, and they were 2 times more likely to die from the virus. You may ask why. Well, this was because of their socioeconomic status at that time. So, what were the reason for the high statistics? Well, one reason was because initially China would not allow the World Health Organization to come in and inspect and try to contain what was going on initially. Now, by the time China allowed the World Health Organization to come in, the virus had spread to numerous countries around the world. Also, in the United States, the virus was difficult to contain because people just refused to follow the CDC guidelines. So that those are 2 reasons. The third reason is in the United States at that time, there was a President Donald Trump, who was he was known for lying, to be honest. He was known for exaggerating the truth. And so during that time in the United States, It was very volatile. Um, when the president said that, initially, he said that the virus was not an issue, that the United States only had one case. That was in January of 2020 when they found that initial case. So from there, President Trump told people the virus was just a hoax, and they believed him. Then he said that the virus would just disappear. Well, you may ask, well, why did they believe the president? Well, it's because the president had a cult like following and people hung on his every word and they believed everything he said. So, a proportion of the population just believed that the virus was a hoax and they refused to wear masks and they refused to social distance. So, uh, the pandemic just became really out of control. Um, there were no federal mask mandates, and states were uh, just basically allowed to manage the virus on their own. So you may ask, well, what happened? How were they able to finally get the virus under control? Well, I'm glad you asked. In November of 2020, the United States elected a new president, President Joe Biden, and he was determined to get the virus under control so people can get back to their normal lives. And so, in January 2021, when he was sworn in, he um, he contracted with companies to mass produce the vaccine. I'm sorry, let me back up. So in December of 2020, um, scientists who were racing to find a vaccine, they finally was able to approve the first vaccine for emergency use. And so by uh, March of 2021, there were three vaccines that was approved for emergency use, and people were able to get vaccinated. By the fall of 2021, the majority of the U.S. population was vaccinated, and everybody was able to get back to life as normal. And so that was the 2020 coronavirus disease or COVID 19. So, thank you for joining me again. And I hope I said something to, shed some light on the 2020 coronavirus. And we'll see you next week with on Emmy, with the beat on Emmy.